Hello and welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker is Tim Jones, Strategy Director of venturethree, a high-end branding agency here in London. I've had the chance to work with Tim on a rebranding of a public company in the past, and I know from experience how good a speaker he is, so I won't keep him from you for long. So, Tim, can you hear me? Hello? We cannot hear you.
Hello, hello. Can
Now
you
we
hear me?
can. Now we can. Fantastic. Hi. How are you
Hi.
doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, our pleasure. I'll leave the stage to you, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions in the end.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. This should be a bit of a whirlwind. Should be quite fun. Hopefully, quite valuable. So let's have a play. We can just see me now. I'm assuming you can all see that. I don't know if you will be able to. So,
Not yet. We're
not
hoping.
yet.
Ozan will sort it out in the back end. So
You let
anyway,
me know.
we'll let you know. Just let us know. Just start speaking. Ozan will sort it out in the back end. So
Okay, so my piece is brand, the most powerful lever for growth. I'm going to, like Barry said, we are a branding company based in London. I've got a few examples to share with you, which hopefully works that way, but it's very visual, so I'm very unnerved whether you can't see my screen yet.
I think you need to start sharing your screen one more time. That's what I'm being told from the green room. Start
From the green room. Okay,
Yes.
we'll go again. We'll go again. Oh, we're in. Do you have it now, Baris?
Well done.
We're in. Okay, here we go. So brand, I am a brand advocate. So what I've actually renamed this talk is brand, the most powerful lever for everything. So I'm about to get on my high horse, but I hope you take it in great spirit. This is my brand experience. So hopefully these are all the brands I've worked on or with. So hopefully I've got a little right to be there. So what I'm going to do is park my strategic imposter syndrome and pretend today for this summit that I am Tenzing Norgay and you guys are all Hillary, and we're going to get to the top of this this summit together talking about brand. The other thing is I'm probably going to preach to the converted somewhat. So apologies if you guys all know this already, but I think it's important for us to really understand what we're talking about. And the first thing on there is this isn't branding. This is brand with a capital B. And what I mean by brand is this is the conventional model for how brand turns up in an organization. You have a leadership team, operations, sales, customer, marketing. Then if you're a trained academic marketer, you'd have segmentation. Then you look at targeting. Who in that segment will I target? Then you position, and then your brand is part of that positioning thing. The way we think about brand is the nucleus of an organization. Brand right at the heart of everything, the energy, the spirit, the soul, right at the heart of this business. And then leadership wraps around that, and then the behaviors from that leadership and that brand are driven through the business, and that penetrates out into the world, and you start resonating. And we actually use the word resonance to track how powerful that brand is for growth, for anything. If you think about the concept of resonance, it's about that when you hit that note, you know a brand that is resonant in culture. You can just feel it. If you work for a brand that is resonant, you feel it. So everything is aligned and hugely relevant to where it lives on that in its marketplace. So we believe brand is the most powerful lever for transformational business success, and growth being part of that. And you could change that word, and we do, for engine, gearing, computer, the sage, whatever it might be. It's the very center of an organization or an organism. So with that in mind, we're going to share with you 5 engine tuning, business transforming strategies, lessons, thoughts, things. Don't quite know what they are, but there's 5 things for you here that we believe will help drive growth. And we're going to do that through the story of 5 clients. And this is not a case studies. This is just hopefully the best way to give you the sort of learning that will unlock some insights that will drive things forward. So the first one is King, the gaming company, Trustpilot, sports director, a British retailer, Bormioli Pharma, an Italian pharmaceutical product, glass manufacturer, and now is a streaming service. So we've got a huge spread of brands here to talk through. And they're going to tell us 5 lessons. The first is to reframe everything. The second is to take the category high ground. The third is to own your truth. The fourth is to believe yourself. That's not a spelling mistake. Believe yourself. And then the fifth is to act on principle. And again, I may be preaching to the converted, but hopefully these lessons will show you where growth really stems from. The first is to reframe everything. Now, King, when they first came to us, very much called themselves a mobile gaming company. And I'd like to take a little tangential anecdote here. If you ever get a chance, this is Benjamin Zander. Benjamin Zander is a composer. He does a brilliant TED talk. And there's a moment in this talk when he says, most of the classical music community know that 4% of people like classical music. If only they could get it to 5%, 6%. He says, how do you behave if you think that way? He then says, he believes that everybody loves classical music. They just don't know it yet. And then he acknowledges, how do you behave? How do you walk? How do you think? And this is fundamentally what this first lesson is about. It's about reframing the role and your agenda for your brand. So King, they were a mobile gaming company, and they looked it. They felt it. They were very good. They were run by developers, and they're a phenomenal business. They were the creators of Candy Crush. But as an organization, they were very much considering and thinking and seeing and feeling as a mobile gaming company. We asked them to reframe that, and we've reframed them through the light of being a snackable entertainment pioneer. Same output, same business, but through this new lens of how you think about yourself. You're an entertainment business, just happens to be snackable entertainment, 2 minutes, not a 90-minute film. And you're a pioneer in that space. How would you stand? How would you walk? How would you talk? And that led them to an IPO, and it was actually snackable entertainment, which was written on the front of the IPO prospectus for investors. Suddenly you're not mobile gaming, which feels small and geeky and developery. You're part of the entertainment world. And how do you act? How do you behave? You then can have an idea off of that, which was bite-sized brilliance. And then that idea permeates for everything in the business. They even stopped doing 1-hour meetings to do 20-minute meetings, because snackable entertainment's about bite-sized brilliance, so we can keep it right down at the core. And it drove business and drove scale for the business through that story. So that's the first one, is reframe. The next is to take the category high ground. I'm very passionate about this one. This features Trustpilot. Trustpilot were the world's leading, and still are the world's leading, customer review software. Now, you could reframe that in your head if you use the other rule. Fundamentally, their business is, well, we have two sides. We have businesses and customers. One gives reviews, the other gives experiences, and it's defined by 5 stars. All of the people in the space say the same things: get sold, click-through rates, improve conversion, user-generated content, get seen. This is how the whole category spoke. Every single player. And as a market leader, that didn't make much sense. The other challenge was their business model didn't make sense anymore. Customers were giving very little, giving quite a lot to businesses. Businesses were being paid for the privilege, and businesses were giving very little back. And it was creating an imbalance to be one journalist said, the trust brand that can't be trusted. So the very business became a misbalanced business model. Now, what you normally do when you position a brand is you map the market, and then you find the space and you put your brand in that market map. What we like to do is think about that map having a topography. Turn it on its side. There are high points, emotional high grounds that you could capture. And actually, if you then go back with that mindset to the model, it's not about businesses and customers transacting. It's about them working together to get better. And ultimately, what are they trying to get better with? Was improving the experience for customer and for businesses. So the category high ground is not about trust or conversion rates or click-through rates. It's about ever improving experiences for everyone. We don't have 5 billion reviews on our platform. We have 5 billion human experiences. That's the emotional high ground. If you want to lead a category, find the high ground. So for all of the brands and businesses listening now, what might your high ground be and how do you own it? And then you have this beautiful narrative for the world about collaboration, openness, coming together to make things better. And that's a leadership position in that space, just by owning the high ground. And again, that change of mindset, that reframe, that emotional injection really just transformed how they even operated as a business and how they designed and how they thought and how they innovated. The next one is to own your truth. This is a story about Sports Direct. Sports Direct are the biggest sports retailer in the UK, nearly in Europe. And they were a brand that was obsessed with value and phenomenally good at it. But that's where it sort of their obsession stopped. There was no brand, there's no narrative. In fact, they sort of fought against it, really. And because they didn't own their own story, people put their own story together for them. And that story, that story was really about cheapness. And if you don't own your brand next to a value proposition, you're just seen as cheap. And you become a little bit the wrong type of narrative. They were also, because they didn't have their own story, obsessed with one of their competitors, JD. We need to be more like JD. We need to be more like JD. And the client came to us and said, no, we need our own identity and we need to identify what we're about. So we looked within the business and we tried to find a truth so that we could own our own story, but also transform the business. So the perception, because of how they've behaved, was that they were uncaring or brash. The truth in that is that they were true to their self. They didn't care what anyone thought of them. They did what was good for them and good for their customers. Truly authentic truth. Same fact, same piece of data, different truth. And actually, when you looked at the world at the time, a couple of years ago, realness was becoming more important than anything. Cool was being authentic and real to yourself. So suddenly we had a truth that's valuable in the world. The other perception was that it was cheap. Well, if you reframe that truth, that gave millions of people access to brilliant sports equipment and apparel. So cheap meant for everyone. So their truth was about being for everyone. We're not changing the business. We're celebrating what made it great. The rebrand then became about the power of sport as an equalizer, about being accessible for everyone, about being true to yourself, and even the equal sign made its way into the brand. Even to the point where that sense of accessibility, owning your truth, being true to yourself, drove really powerful transformational platforms like Equal Play and reducing the gender pay gap in sport, getting more girls into rugby, whatever it might be. That drove everything from that truth that was always true to the business. As Becky said, they needed to be a very different business, but they didn't want to do it at the cost of their own identity. So when you're looking for growth, look for the truth inside, maybe reframe it and build your business back around that truth. The fourth one is believe yourself. This is a slightly different type of customer. Bormioli Pharma were a pharmaceuticals packaging company, really a glass manufacturer. They made little glass vials that go out to the world. And the whole world, their clients, they service some of the biggest, highest spending, most professional, specialist, R&D heavy businesses on the planet. And what they do is create what's called a dirty industry, glass. It's not dirty. It's just a reference to the factory. And they create billions of these tiny little things. So the question there is, what does big pharma R&D, how do they really connect with us that are doing something at 0.4p per unit? What's our role in this? How do we have this story? The trick here was to find a belief that transformed again the way we thought about our role in the world and the role in even in the supply chain. And this took some finding, but if you think about what they do, it's an obsession with the smallest thing in the supply chain. They're not just a thing that will go wrong now for R&D, they are fundamental to that process. So we built a whole brand around a belief that only an obsession with the small things are the big things made possible. So right there, when we're trying to own the respect of these billion-dollar companies, it was our obsession with the thing we did, that small thing we did, that gave them permission and respect and reverence for our role in the mix, and started to reimagine that. So in that, if we look at the supply chain, we've got $86 billion a year in R&D going through this tiny little thing we do and out to the world's health. So suddenly we are hugely significant in that story because of the one thing we believe and the one thing we build our business around. So that led us to this lovely story about small part, big impact. Yes, we might just be a 4.4 pence glass vial, but we understand its importance in the world and we're obsessed with making it perfect. And that gives us a permission to be a big fundamental player in that supply chain. Now, just to broaden it out, probably the most famous belief and why I believe Nike to be one of the best brands in the planet and unassailable #1 in sport is their belief. Yes, they have purpose and missions, but fundamentally they have a belief, which I believe to be the high ground in sport and actually in human aspiration. They believe if you have a body, you're an athlete. And then it's from that that every single behavior, campaign, hire drives. They could change their mission if they want, but fundamentally it's that belief. If you've got a body, you're an athlete, and we're here to inspire and innovate for you. So find your belief and have that elevate above anything else in your strategic narrative. The fifth one, this is about acting on principle. So this is Now TV are a streaming platform here in the UK and now in Europe. They are part of the Sky Group. They have access to hundreds of billions of dollars worth of world-class content. But unfortunately, they were still quite a legacy brand. They were sort of 12 years old. And they were still kind of the fun, easy, cheap player instead of going with Sky or over a subscription. And they'd built some branding personalities. We've got to be full of fun. We've got to be easy. We've got to be smart. We've got to be on the pulse. And they were right down at the bottom of branding, then brand personality. And they did a great job. But over 10, 12 years, the category had shifted. Far more sophisticated, far more universally embraced. Netflix, Apple, Amazon, the biggest brands in history are playing in the space. And Now needed to elevate itself up into that space to compete. But then beyond there, it needed a point of difference in that space. Perhaps Now is a bit more of a community brand. Maybe it's more about its conversation and being part of everyday life, its flexibility becoming a feature. So somehow we needed a way to drive new behaviors, a new position for that brand. And the way we did it is we turned to brand principles, no longer just tone of voice principles or personality, but principles that run through every single part and every single decision that that brand offers. We went with passionate, effortless, impressive, inviting. There's a huge depth underneath that. But suddenly everybody that touched the brand, not just the brand team or marketing team, had to deliver on that promise. It transformed the product. It transformed our 404 messages. It transformed every little thing we did to try and find our place amongst those world-class brands and then hopefully shift somewhere far more exciting. And this just plays that back, how it did, in fact, those principles were the permission for the brand and marketing team to have really powerful conversations with product, with sales, with the lowest or like the most distant player in the mix as a business could still have the same conversation. So principles, hugely powerful for driving that, for powering that lever. The other thing I will say here, being totally candid, is I don't think they're quite good enough. I think they're too simple. And this is really, we want to go again on them. We think they're so important for a business and how you behave that we'd love to go again. And that's the journey we're on now. And a bit of example from that, whether this is true or not, I found this from Nike back in the day, was one of their sort of principle lists. And just how beautifully written, we're on the offense all the time. Imagine hearing that as an employee or as a business. Imagine getting that creative brief. It's a real spirit. So we need to write these principles in a really powerful way. And then Arup, unbelievable organization. But these beautiful little principles here, like straight and honorable dealings, humane organization, total architecture. These are concepts within concepts and can be hugely powerful for how you transition and grow a business. So that's nearly there. I realized this was about growth, so we just want to pull that back to the summit. IPO, King IPO'd against that story because they reframed it at 7 billion. Some say 2 billion higher than it needed to. Trustpilot started to reduce compliance because they brought the customer and the consumer together and started talking about experiences, not click-through rates. Sports Direct's positive brand sentiment, because everyone now understood the brand and why they did what they did, their sentiment went through the roof. Bormioli share grows, now subscribers driven. And we believe it's not just that, but because brand is at the heart of the business, it is the fuel, the nucleus for that sort of growth. So back to our summit, reframe everything, take the category high ground, own your truth, believe yourself and act on principle, and growth, we believe, will follow. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. And it's been eye-opening as usual hearing you speak. And I have a few questions to you. You talked about the principles here, but I want to touch the first thing you said. You talked about resonance, and then that really touched me because as an amateur, let's say, musician, I really understand when the chord is right, when the resonance is there, and it's something really hard to define. But when a brand is right for you, you feel like you own that brand. Interestingly, can you tell me how do you measure that? How do you understand it's resonating?
Yeah, that's the multi-billion-dollar question. But and we're actually working with econometricians and insight and data people as we speak to try and find those things. Some of it will be art, a lot of it will be science. Each of those layers, you'd be able to measure the resonance. So I could look at alignment score between leadership and employee, for example. Mm-hmm. So how aligned are they? So to your point about the waves of your note, musical note, are they aligned? You could then look at sentiment analysis out in the market. Is culture playing back to you what you believe your brand to be? Mm-hmm. Is there a dissonance there? How can you that? So a lot of it can be multiple data points, and then you're looking for alignment, and then probably strength of what we call relevance. So we're looking at the moment at how you measure relevance and alignment, and we believe a combination of that will give you that resonance. But even just looking for alignment, ask other people what they think. Are they playing? Is your customer playing back what you think's important to you? And if they're not, you're miles from resonance. So it could just be a 5-minute call.
I understand. So I'll just get to my next question then about reframing. I really like the concept, and I think I found it very close to I think Philip Kotler's marketing myopia concept. When he talks about the trains in the early US, thinking they're in the train business, but actually they're in the transportation business. And when the aerospace kicks off, they lose market share. So this is, I think, about taking a step back from what you do day to day and actually understanding what industry you're really in. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some of the biggest businesses in the world you'd think would have this locked in. But if you
Mhm.
take something like, I don't know, let's take a social media brand like a Facebook. What is social media? They're a social media company? Are they a connection company? They now say they're a metaverse company. But really, what does that mean? Is that about connection, or does that just make you a utility company? That's just laying the pipes. And that's
Mhm.
maybe where one of the problems is.
Mhm.
Maybe actually they're in the business of the human experience,
Mhm.
and that's about being fallible and being lost and being found. And
Mhm.
suddenly the business takes over. But if you reframe that,
Mhm.
it can really challenge how you do, especially a product company, because they're just looking at the analytics and maybe have lost track a little bit of why they're really engineering that product. I'd
Mhm.
say most of the world open Facebook because they're lonely. Now, it's probably not one of their things on the spreadsheet, but
Mhm.
maybe they're in the business of not being lonely, and that's a pretty powerful reframe. And suddenly, I think they're very important in the world. So, yeah, I think it's just constantly asking that question, and
Mhm.
even if it doesn't change the answer, the journey of asking that question will create some
Mhm.
interesting provocations.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear because you might because I had the chance to work with you guys and we went through a big journey of rebranding a public company,
Yeah,
and the journey itself was to me as eye opening as maybe more transformative than the end result,
yeah,
and I think that that is a really important factor to almost not rebrand or not rebrand. I will touch those things, but do you think the businesses should evaluate their brand every now and then, not for the sake of changing it, but understanding the resonance of it or how
yeah,
it works or it doesn't work?
yeah. I think it should be constant. I mean, the aspiration would be that there's a constant, like going to the doctors or
Mm,
checking in with your shrink or whatever it might be, and just to check the things you believed in are are they still important to the world? Um, the thing that you started with, are you still true to that story? It's pretty heavy stuff. It's existential, but it might not have to be if everyone's just constantly up taking an extra 2 minutes from every hour of a big meeting just to check yourself and work out, are we where we thought we'd be? Just that step back, as you said.
mhm,
And the brand might not need to change. It will change without knowing it if you change your core.
mhm,
It's not rebranding. It's just recentering. Maybe
mhm.
that's the new brief.
Yeah, maybe. And I want to just touch another concept you just laid out at the very beginning of your speech around where brand really sits in organizations. And that slide was really eye opening again, and how you put it into the very center of what a company is actually.
Yeah,
And where in reality it might sit at places, and we've seen this, where it might be in the day to day workings of a company.
yeah.
And can you just tell us what, in your experience, have you been? I'm sure you have many times, but just, how you arrived there to really take it from being agenda item on number 36 to being the thing that you start with.
I think it's still a very big challenge. It probably comes down to in our instant, the people who are briefing us or owning the problem, if you
Mhm,
will. We'll always push to at least engage, if not become best buddies with the owner, CEO. It's why founder businesses are often hugely successful.
mhm,
It's also when they struggle when they get a little bit older,
mhm,
is that they don't need to articulate what they are because the founder is there living and
mhm,
breathing and selecting. It's when you scale that it becomes a bit more difficult.
mhm,
So I think the short answer would be making sure you involve everyone, if possible, in the process.
mhm,
Um, we'll sometimes interview 1,000 people via a survey and do
mhm,
50 stakeholder interviews. So
mhm,
really, we're just playing back to you what your business is saying their brand is,
mhm,
and making sure it doesn't become, even if it's a line item, whether it's the end point
mhm,
or the first point, doesn't have to take all the time or the weight, but it
mhm.
just frames the conversation so that everything else has context, I guess.
Mhm. Cool. Just another question that springs to my mind. With the pandemic and everything, access to office has been really a very big, but went through a huge transformation. And I know from experience, and I'm sure you'll agree, living the brand is the office, the head office really helps a lot, and it's seeing the way it's set up, the changes after before and after, seeing your new logo, feeling it, the motivational stuff on the walls, or even the coffee machine that has been changed. What
Yeah,
the feeling of
yeah,
the office, really our spaces frame how we feel about things. And
yeah.
uh, working from home, how does that really affect any branding study that you're doing, or does it?
I think the implications are huge. Think of any co- a fixed culture or community, or they have symbolism, they have central destinations. So there is now a smaller list of mechanics or levers
Mhm.
to collectively engage and align and gather around. So I
Mhm.
guess it just means you have to work harder, a bit like Ollie was saying before. You have to work harder on the things you can do,
Mhm.
and they might not be easy or as traditional as you think.
Mhm.
But this is pretty lame. But should every, this is very lame, in fact. But branded mugs would be the last thing I thought we'd talk about on this talk, because it's like branding 1010101. But if what things do we all do at home? We all
Yeah.
wake up, we all get a coffee.
Mhm.
If there are some ways that we can find these moments or these pieces of symbolism that just recenter everyone every day,
Mhm.
communication is obviously
Mhm.
critical, but
Mhm.
just different ways to penetrate people's little behaviors, everyday conscience or consciousness, with a reminder of why they got up in the first place.
Mhm.
It's more about just finding them and committing to them and executing with conviction, to replace what might have been. But remember, there's a lot of businesses that when they were in an office and the culture's horrible. So
Maybe
it's
it
not
was a
necessarily,
lucky escape for some people.
for some it might be better, right?
Mhm.
Because they've
Mhm.
removed the things that damage culture. So I think it's just find the things, be intentful for what they are, and then really overcommit on them. See what happens.
Yeah, whilst we're there, I'll ask another homeworking question to you, because I see you're home too, and I'm home too. And so the thing is, just like you said, maybe branded coffee mugs will be the last thing on our agenda today, but they are. And that being said, for people, I now understand since the past 2 years almost, people are more in their home setting than they are in an office setting,
Yeah,
and that has changed the way people conduct business. I personally believe, in
yeah.
the at least in the B2B world that I'm in, and I speak to a lot of people, and I do interview people, and we get on talks like this. So, do you think working from home actually being embedded in your personal culture all day long, yeah, and just experiencing the company culture from a screen, does it make you more you? And does the power of you become more important in the new world for a company brand?
That's a lovely thought. Now, for someone who struggles a little bit with their work-life balance, I have to answer this in context. But there is a shared humanity, a shared experience that perhaps gets you closer as people.
Mhm,
This shared experience of being at home, or both
mhm,
having a kitchen, or
mhm,
both struggling with this, that creates a sense of connection, human connection,
mhm,
the platform from which, the basis on which you can create better work. I think that's hugely powerful. But I guess we've also got to create some really good fences and understand when, you'll have nothing left if you give everything,
mm,
all yourself, and blend them completely. So
mhm,
maybe this is the time for the metaverse to step up and create these hybrid spaces that are
mhm,
neither home nor work,
mhm,
but they allow you to switch on the mode you'd like to put in there. Don't know.
mhm.
It's a huge question. I'll have to take it away with me and figure it out.
So you can talk about all about that when you get back in season 2 for
Yeah,
agency growth events.
of course.
We'll drink to that. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's been
Pleasure.
great to have you. And hopefully, as I said, when we launch season 2, we'll get you back to talk more about brand and how it helps businesses grow.
Pleasure.
It's been great having you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye. So with that, we now go to our last networking break of the day, and we'll be back at 30 past wherever you are. It's 4:30 here in the UK, but wherever you might be. So we'll be back with a panel on the future of events. I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you.